Hello and welcome, I'm Peasant, and today we're going to do a Overexplain on Wildfire. This is a very tricky spirit to use. I just flat out wouldn't recommend it to people that are new to the game. I still struggle with this. I think I'm just objectively weaker with this spirit compared to its actual power level, but I'll give you my best shot to Overexplain how to play this. It should be, they're very strong at low difficulty though, because they just do so much damage. Anyway, they've got a lot of rules going on. But let's look at Blazing Presence first. So after you add or move, moving is, you're unlikely to do much of that, but it's mainly when you're adding presence from your tracks. After setup, in the land it goes to, for each fire showing on your tracks, do 1 damage. So you notice there's a fire here, fire here, fire here, and fire here. This is an amazingly powerful ability. It basically is like it's like a fast ability that happens before. I mean, it basically happens before the fast phase, but it's, you know, think of it like just a bonus ability you have every turn. If 2 or more fire are showing on your presence tracks, add a blight. Okay, so we're getting funky. We're getting funky. So a key decision point is when to reveal the second fire with this spirit, and I'll talk a bit about that probably more in the actual game. Okay, you also push all beasts and any number of Dahan. So it's also, you can use it to rearrange your Dahan, which is very powerful as well. If you could set up for a good counterattack, that's very nice. It's easy to forget this as well. If you add multiple presence into a land at the same time, only do the above effects once. That's only going to become relevant if you're using a few major powers and things like that. This is crucial. Destructive nature. So blight added due to spirit effects, power, special rules, scenario-based rituals, etc. does not destroy your presence. So that includes placing your own presence, because that would be a bit sad, wouldn't it? So if you have revealed 2 fires, you place down, your presence doesn't immediately disappear. This is super powerful, super useful, but you've got a big decision point about when to reveal that second fire. Okay, let's look at our innates. So they're both range 0. This is another reason why this spirit is complex. Range 0 powers they're harder to plan for. So if you have at least 1 plant element, you'll do a damage per 2 fire you have. So you will have fire off your tracks and fire off your cards. This is very powerful, and this is what this particular power is. These powers are why you really prioritize plant. Plant is king, because you've got fire for days on your tracks, but plant, you only got it here. And this track's funky. You can go this way, but it's quite high variance. So if you have at least 1 plant, then you'll be doing damage in your lands, i.e. range 0, that have blight. So setting up those lands is a key part of the strategy, like the longer term strategy with this spirit, is deciding where you want to have your land that has blight in and your presence. If you get up to 3 plants though, instead of doing 1 damage per 2, you do 1 damage per fire. So this is a huge step up in damage, because by the time you get to have the ability to have 3 plants, you'll be fairly late into the game, and you will probably have maybe 2 or 3 fire on here. Then you'll be playing a load of fire cards, and you'll be able to take out, a city and a town or all sorts. Splitting the powers damage, however desired, between target land and number of lands with this is a bonus. I wouldn't worry too much about getting the air for this, and this very rarely happens. I think sometimes I've done this by accident and I go, well, what's going on here? This is optional, by the way. You don't have to do this. In the app, you can actually disable it by clicking on here clicking on this bit while you're in game. Okay, your other power that's super important is this blight removal power you have. It's a 0 range blight removal, so it's awkward. The other thing to bear in mind is that the top tier is removed from a land where you have 2 blight or more, but it gets more flexible later on, but it's still always going to be range 0. You're very rarely going to trigger this bottom one, probably. You do actually start out with 2 of your own blight that you kind of bring with you, because you've got to be prepared. So you will always have a starting target for removing for using this. So this is definitely worth having. The more blight you have to play with, the happier you are as Wildfire. So growth options. So given that Blazing Presence is so powerful, you want to avoid reclaiming as much as possible. Also, in a really tight game, you've got to remember that if you've revealed 2 fire, which you almost certainly will have, you might be in a position where you just don't want to place presence because that might just mean you lose. So it's tricky, but in general, you want to minimize your reclaims, and you probably want to be your kind of default action is gaining power cards, because the more power cards you have in hand, the less you have to reclaim because you've got loads of cards. You will be forced to do this from time to time just to get some energy though, and probably you do this turn 1, but it depends on the board. Okay, let's look at our starting cards. You've got Flame's Fury. This is crucially, it has fire and plant. All 3 of these have fire and plant, which is great for your firestorm. And the fact that Flash Fires, it doesn't have fire and plant means that this is probably the card you're going to forget if you do go for a major power, or an event says, oh, forget, this is a better one to forget generally because it has worse elements for you. It's also very expensive for what it does. But anyway, Flame's Fury. This is like when in doubt, playing Flame's Fury. It gains you in energy. You might be energy poor with this spirit sometimes, especially if you're really gaining lots of power, minor powers. The +1 damage for each damage dealing power is great for you. It's a really great extreme close-up. It works, of course, with Firestorm and maybe Flash Fires if you're using that, and anything else you've picked up. So yeah, this is like your best card, right? Don't forget this, unless you really have to. Just hang on to Flame's Fury. Threatening Flames is very nice. But it has this awkward Blight plus Invaders restriction, so you'll often not be able to use it. The thing is that this will often be in conflict with your Firestorm because they both have the same targeting restrictions. You might find yourself in a situation where you have to decide whether you target Threatening Flames or Firestorm. You might get lucky and be able to target both, but this here is interesting, this bottom bit. If there are no... oh yeah, I've not actually read the card. It gains you 2 fear, which is great. You can also push an explorer or town per terror level to adjacent lands without your disc. So you can't push from the flames into a land where you can firestorm because it will have your presence in, unless you've raised your range, which sounds good, but it's a bit of a luxury. If there are no such adjacent lands, +2 fear. So in theory, you can make a fear trap with this, but it doesn't seem to pan out that often for me. Your mileage may vary. But it's actually just handy. Let's say the board's very congested. You can, of course, just push an explorer town out of a land if you're worried it's going to ravage, etc. Or if it might even prevent a future explore. It's a good card. It's nice, but often it's really for the elements. 68 Smoke destroys a town. It also pushes a Dahan. It's quite expensive. Often this is a turn 1 play. We might play it turn 1 in this game. Flash Fires is, this is your weakest card, even though it has the cutest art. You can make it fast. So if you do end up asphyxiating Smoke Flash Fires, you can do this fast, but it's in a very expensive way to not really achieve much. It will still have its uses. Let's look at the board. So we are, of course, on difficulty 0. So there's not much starting on the board. And okay, wetland build. So the most straightforwardly useful thing you can do with this spirit is place a presence to prevent a build chain. So especially at 0 difficulty, or not with a proportion of the adversaries, preventing a build chain is one of the best things you could ever want to do. And so I think that's what we'll do. There's another little thing, which is that on boards that start with Blight, there are some thematic that don't start with Blight. But on boards that start with Blight, you can just you could place one of your presence in with the Blight. So this is like the ideal situation, really. But you can place it in with it, and then you've got one of your presence in with a Blight, which is exactly what you want for this ability, exactly what you want for Threatening Flames. It's a real boon. A boon? It's a boon, yeah. I don't mean that as a card, just as in it's great. It's wonderful. And in this case, we're going to be preventing the build chain. It's better than going here because it's not in with a Blight. And also this means I can potentially target more of the island. And which fire do you go with? I personally think it's better to start with this one as a general rule of thumb, unless you are literally going turn 1 major power. You can do that. You can just go like this, turn 1 gain a major power. It's whenever you do something like that, it's quite high variance. You'd probably forget Flash Fires. We're not going to do that. But it's if you do that, you're kind of running to here. Not a lot. I don't have a lot of personal experience with that. So this, I'd say, is your standard start. We're also going to gain a chunk of energy. We get to push our Dahan, and with events in the game, I like to make sure Dahan aren't on their own, but I also quite like to be in with my presence. So I'm going to go with preventing them being on their own. That's because some of the events will take a lone Dahan and turn them into a town. I think there's one event that does that, and there's others where there's disease, and you kind of always, you know, I think they're just happier together. Feel free to debate that. So the other typical for turn 1 players is fixating smoke, because it's just going to destroy a town, right? They're going to build a town in this wetland. We can just destroy it in the slow phase. And this would be highly common that you have a firestorm and nothing to do with it. Yeah, I think that's just a good turn. The other nice thing, yeah, we've basically got no use for these things here. This is the standard. I'm gonna save some of my over-explaining for more complex things. So Firestorm does nothing because there's no one in there to hurt. They're gonna build their town. What's our explore? It's a jungle explore. Okay, so this is the only town on the board. So I guess that's not a decision point. Right. So we've cleared. There is the both lands with ravages. In theory, shouldn't do any damage. This might cause us problems because there is an event that will just buff a lone explorer to doing more damage. So we might want to play around that. We might not. But preventing a build is just definitely a good thing to do. So, and we've got 2 options for doing that. Here, they're already Dahan. So we might just want to let this land go. Because if they build this turn, they'll ravage next turn, which would be a 3 damage ravage. And then they'll kill a Dahan and do another damage to another one. Then that remaining Dahan will fight back and destroy the town. That kind of deals with that land. So I'm inclined to leave that alone. Also, there are events that might mean that Dahan just defend. Similarly, there are events that mean that this beast might just kill this explorer. So we're kind of all right here. But I think preventing the build is pretty much always one of the best things you can do with your time. Like trying to play around this potential blight going down here is a kind of less important thing to think about. So this, I'd say I did generalize earlier about this being your kind of go-to because you want to have a big hand. But having the energy is good for flexibility. But I think you generally want to do this. If in doubt, Flame's Fury is a nice thing to play just for the extra energy. So yeah, we'll do this and we'll look at a minor power. Okay, so what have we got here? So remember, we love plant elements. We love those plant elements. We love them more than fire. This is plant and fire. So this is kind of our perfect elements. It even has the mountain there, but I don't ever hold much hope for doing this, especially in true solo. The game will probably be over by the time you do this. Yeah, so perfect elements. Because remember, although if you've got a choice of a fire or a plant, you probably want to go plant. But if you've got both, that's just even better. So the other nice thing about this particular card, Rouse the Trees and Stones, is that because you've got Flame's Fury, you can buff that to 3 damage, and that's a city you're destroying, which is pretty good. That's a pretty good deal. The blight restriction can be a problem, but the thing is, you're good at destroying stuff that's in with your presence with blight. So this is actually kind of covering one of your weak spots while simultaneously giving you exactly the elements you want. This is a clear pick here. Let's look at the others because this is an Overexplain. So this has the plant and it has some blight removal. We like blight removal as Wildfire. It is a good thing to help because sometimes it takes a while to get Burnland regrows online, and this can be awkward. This isn't the easiest thing to make trigger a lot of the time, especially if you've got other more pressing problems. So we do like blight removal, and this has plant. This is clearly the second choice, and then both of these have fire. This is a funky one. That's I don't use this very often, honestly. It's better in multi-spirit. In multi-spirit, there's much more of an emphasis on kind of wombo comboing. and your kind of collective power as spirits is just that much stronger. And this enables all kinds of shenanigans for a solo. This is just generally not so useful, unless you're gaining cards mid-turn. But even then, not. I think I'd probably favour Steam Vents here, because it's just a straightforwardly kind of useful power. But again, this is kind of horrible because it's a 0 range, and typically a 0 range as Wildfire, you're kind of that's your best spot really. So yeah, these are kind of bad for us. This is very good, and this is kind of good. So we'll go Rouse. It does need to be near a sacred site, but we start with a super sacred. It's a triple. So we're going to place our presence in one of these lands to prevent the build chain. If we go, say, Flames, Fury, Rouse, we could actually just clear this land in the slow phase. They're going to build a town, and we could just slap it with Rouse the Trees. We're not adjacent with a sacred site to here, so we don't have that option in this land. Yeah, so we'll do this. And we do get to move a beast. I hadn't really factored that in, actually. I think a good rule of thumb is you want to put your beast somewhere where they can have an impact, which is almost always in with invaders. Yeah, they always. I think they're mostly happy in with invaders. I don't think there's ever much point in putting them out on their own. And the reasoning for that is that event cards happen before the explore phase. So if it's an empty land, the beast isn't going to prevent the explore. Well, actually, I think there might be very rare circumstances where it might, but it's more likely to do you some good in with an invader. It's also not likely to kill a city. I think that's basically impossible for a lone beast to do that, but it could kill a town. So we push in with the town there. All right, we're going to go with this here. So we've incidentally got a firestorm, but we've got nothing to do with it. So this happens so often that if you do see powers where you can use to push invaders into these kind of deathlands where you can firestorm, it does make them pretty nice picks. Right. So that's what we're going with. Flames Fury, just play on ourselves, and now we could destroy a town in there, but we have no town. So we still got Healthy Island. Explorers have +1 health. Big whoop. Each beast generates a fear if invaders are present and moves to an adjacent land if not. Okay, so we've already gained a fear off that, and then we're going to gain a Dahan somewhere. We didn't have a choice, so it went in this desert here. We're happy with that. Very happy. And that Ravage, you see, didn't do any damage. It was only a single damage. But the event could have meant we get a Blight there. But it's not a disaster having a Blight in there, really. Okay, so the fact that these explorers have extra health means we're not clearing this land this turn, but we are going to do the most important bit, which is destroying the town. Because, again, it's going to be like this Ravage next turn. It should be all right. It might not be. Alternatively, we could hit this land. So this is new information. This is the Explorer, and then it's shifted across. We could hit this land, destroy this town. Interestingly, this push 1, I didn't think that would be relevant. We can actually clear the land here, and that is a push 1, not a push up to 1. This is not optional. We have to push if we can. So we can actually prevent this city build next turn. Preventing city builds is even better than preventing town builds, because cities are just that bit more awkward to get rid of for almost every case. So this is tempting to prevent the city build. Not only would we be preventing a city from being built, which is great, we're also going to be removing, if we can push this into one of our push this remaining explorer into one of our deathlands, we'll have food for Firestorm, and we're kind of working towards clearing the interior, which will reduce the number of explorers potentially. So I think I'm tempted to leave this as the messy Ravage that I talked about earlier, and kind of hit this first instead. It's a shame it doesn't completely clear the land, but the fact that this push 1 exists means that this, I think, is worthwhile. So we'll destroy the town, and we'll do 1 damage to this buff, but they'll get pushed. into, and we'll push into one of our lands that has our own presence and blight. And it doesn't really matter too much which one we push into. This land has loads of Dahan, so I think we'll push it in with the Dahan. Except that might mean we get a disease event, but don't worry about that. That's just, you know, might just happen. So remember about how I was talking about this is your go-to. We might just draw a useful defend card here with this option. You want to minimize those reclaims. The other option we have is pretty juicy. Instead of going to 3 plays, which 3 plays isn't that appealing because we can't afford our flash fires, we're only going to be able to play 2 anyway. We could plonk down in here and reveal this second fire and destroy the town. And then instead of them placing a blight, we get to place blight. You know, that's what we want to do. The nice thing about that is it's removing this town, which means that if we explore into desert, they won't go in there because there wouldn't be an adjacent town. I think we're doing that. So this decision point is critical for Wildfire, is when do you jump across? I think people often will deliberately put it off as long as possible, but I like this possibility. We could even, and because we are placing presence and we have all these rules here, we could actually push these to Han maybe to somewhere useful, like down here. Yeah, so I like that. I like it a lot. We could even milk a bit of fear with threatening flames because we have an explorer in here. Yeah, I think this is decent. This is decent. The plan, and the interesting thing, because it's a presence placement, it kind of we obviously don't need to budget energy for it because it costs us nothing. And given that we can still, we're going to have 1 energy. This is a nice thing to play for 2 fear. I think we're going to go with this as our kind of go-to. We might be a bit broke when we reclaim, but I think it's okay. I think we're fine. How can I over-explain that? Having more energy is good. You're a bit more flexible. But having extra cards is kind of like having extra energy because of the events. If you get, there are quite a lot of events where if you can discard a card from your hand or forget a card, that will pay for quite a useful positive thing, and also typically prevent a horrible outcome. So yeah, we're going to gain another minor power. Okay, nothing has plants. Boo-hoo. The other thing to bear in mind is that we've got to look at, if we look at the power first, that might change this idea. We might just draw a solution in here. For example, Land of Haunted Embers, we could push these instead and gain fear, but we would be again adding blight. You want to be really careful with Wildfire, with powers that actually add blight. You won't have any shortage of blight on the island. So, in the absence of plant, we prefer fire. We also like cheap. This is quite nice. We're always going to get this threshold. It's a range 0 push, but we can actually use this in lands where we have presence, but we don't have blight. Honestly, none of these are that great for us. Placing disease is very, very powerful. Preventing a build is wonderful, but this is a bit expensive for us. It's tempting to take this. It's an incredibly powerful card, pushing this much stuff, potentially getting 4 fear in the fast phase, is pretty ridiculous. Though bear in mind, if target land already has blight and you're adding blight to it, you're basically cascading for that 4 fear. So it's a finisher, not necessarily a starter. We can use Visions of Fiery Doom this turn, and I like push abilities. With Wildfire, because all of our kind of innate push abilities can't push into, well, I say Threatening Flames is the only one we have. It can't push into our own territory. We can't push into these Deathlands, so I'm going to go Visions of Fiery Doom. It'll also just incidentally get us some fear without placing extra blight. So we're gonna go with this, and we're going to destroy this town. So it's 2 damage because we've revealed the second fire here. And we do get to push Dahan now if we want to. I'm going to push them down here. We haven't drawn any defense cards, but remember, we are constantly gaining minor powers. I think that's a good plan with this spirit. And we're going to just go with these. And we actually have done Burn Land Regrows here, kind of just incidentally. The nice thing about this is we can actually Threatening Flames. Oh no, we can't. We can't actually push into here, and well, we could push. Yeah, it's got a lot of zero range nonsense going on, but we will gain some fear this turn. And you know, this is good. This is good. We've done good things here. Very, very good. So, we've got a firestorm. We've actually got 4 fire elements. If we Threatening Flames here, we are forced to push this explorer down here, which is fine. You know, it's not terrible, and it is just some of the easiest fear you're going to get. If we Threatening Flames here, we're pushing an explorer into the inland, which you don't really want to do so much. But if we pushed it into here, we could just plonk down on it next turn and kill it. And so that's kind of okay. We can, of course, have an interceding Visions of Fiery Doom just to push Dahan around. So we could push, push invaders around. We could push this explorer into here and then kill them both with Firestorm, but then we don't get to Threatening Flames. Okay. So when do you balance going for fear over damage? Tricky. Getting to the next level of the next terror level is a big bump in the effectiveness of fear cards. If we do both of these, we're gaining 4 fear, so we'll be nearly at terror 2. Given that we're this early on, I'm not so worried. But we might have the possibility to win very quickly if we can make sure that no towns are built. I think we prioritize fear here, because once we get to Terror 2, we don't need to completely remove all the invaders. We can just remove the buildings. So I think I'm going to prioritize fear. So we're going to use Threatening Flames. And... yeah, and I think I'm going to use it here and push this explorer into this land. Because if we get a wetland explorer... it won't add an additional explorer in there because there will be no buildings adjacent to it. And then it'll just be two explorers, and the other explorer will be in here, which is an easy land for us to... We can just kill it with our Firestorm. It'll be a single explorer. We'll kill it with Firestorm. And we can just plonk a presence down here and destroy the 2 that are in there. And that's just... That is preferable to adding it in here, I think. But the beast might take care of it. Yeah, actually, I think there's not much odds there, actually. Yeah, so we'll do that. We could, of course, push this guy for fear into here. Yeah, I don't think it makes much difference, actually. We've got a small chance of getting help from the beast here, but we will be pushing into a build, so that's terrible. Let's not do that. Let's push in here. And we can Visions of a Fiery Doom. So we can... push this guy, and because it's just a general push ability, we're actually okay to push it into one of our Deathlands, and we'll just destroy them as well. What's the event? Add a town to a land with explorers or towns. So it's kind of unfortunate we cleared out all these explorers now. Okay. Event's throwing us a little curveball. A town being in here is actually quite easy for us to destroy. A town being down here means that they're going to build a city this turn. If we're going to try and win quickly, we don't really want that. Once we've got more fire revealed, it's a bit more viable. So yeah, we'll let them have a town in here. And the trouble is that's going to mean that they're going to explore from there. Okay, each player moves an explorer from a coastal land. There only was one. Oh, we got... Okay, the fear cards are really helping me. Each player removes explorer town for land with a sacred site, not applicable. We have no jungle ravages because we've cleaned them up. The explore... Yeah, so this town that we placed here did mean that we got an explore. But we would have had a build over here. we do get, and burn land regrows. We always start with two blight in there. So it is worth, I'd say with burn land regrows, it's worth, if you do get a later on, a higher tier of burn land regrows, which isn't restricted to a 2 blight land, you might want to use it. But also, these lands where you have presence and blight, they're a real asset. They're you know, they're kind of one of your strongest features. So it's not always a no-brainer to just remove. It's almost always the best first blight to remove because there's no disadvantage to having 1 instead of 2. Okay, we've actually got an interesting situation here. We've got doubled up lands. This is actually generally pretty good for the spirits, except against high-level England, because let's say this ravage happens and nothing, and you know, and there's no event that affects it. They'll clear in the ravage. They'll do a damage, and then Dahan will clear it up. So that's just kind of fine. And if you can get a kind of Dahan counterattack in these doubled up lands, it's just it's incredible value for money. You gotta love it. So that being said, we can push to 3 plays, but it's kind of pointless. We only have 1 card. It's it's by far our weakest card. So the thing is, we've got an opportunity to prevent all the builds this round. This build should just prevent itself. If we place a presence in here, we are preventing this build. We are also adding a blight, remember. I think flash fires is awful. It's just awful. Even if we gained a minor power with air to make this power fast, so what? So what? I suppose if we gained a power that made it fast, we could land a presence in here and destroy this, preventing that build. Okay, maybe. And there are a few powers that we like that have air, fire, and plant. The thing is, though, if we do that this turn, we can actually have a turn where we have very little to do because we'll have cleared both of these lands. So I think we do this, and again, you always look at the power first if you can. If you can handle that. Okay, so, for example, we could prevent that build with Enticing Splendor and plonk in here, destroying the town. We can use this to drag into our 1 sad land that doesn't have blight in. And it has the crucial plant element. Inflame the Fires of Life is a pretty strong card. I mean, if you get the Threshold, it's kind of crazy. We're unlikely to get the Threshold. And it's limited to just this part of the island. We've actually got... Okay, we've got kind of Drought, and then a very similar card to Drought. These cards are very, very powerful, very nice finishers. This does place Blight, as does Scour the Land. Yeah, these are incredibly powerful. Do we actually have... We've got 1 Flames Fury. What I was thinking about is, can we get the Threshold on Drought, which allows us to destroy a city? The thing is, these are great, right? These are great, but Enticing Splendor helps us kind of win without adding more Blight. Okay. If we hadn't already revealed our second fire, we might be more tempted by these. And I'd say in general with Wildfire, you've got to be careful adding extra Blight. Enticing Splendor has the plant, it's cheap, and it prevents this build, and allows us to create a blighted land with our presence in here, which is pretty good for us. So I think we're going to go with Enticing Splendor. And it also it incidentally has the air, which means we can do flash fires in the fast phase. So we might actually prefer it to be slow. So we've now got to decide what which presents to put out, and it's not actually that obvious. We could go with actually preventing this. Oh no, this build prevents itself. If we go with this option, we can't play the 3rd card, but getting the 3rd far on the track means that we can plonk down and kill a city, which might well just be the win. This is another energy. Oh, we need the other energy if we want to play flash fires. Do we want to play flash fires? What's Flashfires actually going to do for us? Flashfires is actually going to do very little for us. It's going to do so little for us that I think we go for having that third fire and having the easy plonk and win in here. Though, yeah, we might be able to just plonk and win. Depends on the event. What I mean by that is placing this presence here, revealing the third fire and just destroying the city, removing the last building on the map. Because we are getting, yeah, we are 3 fear away from the win. Away from a potential Terra 2 win, which is no buildings on the map. So I'm going to reveal this. This also means that if we do reclaim, which we might do, we've actually got a, you know, we're going to be pretty powerful. We're going to be able to play a lot of things. So, yeah, let's plonk this in here. And yeah, we'll destroy the building. And we're going to Enticing Splendor. And I mean, the plant there enables Firestorm, which just, you know, it's just glorious. So this is the only place we can Firestorm, so let's not think about that too much. And we're going to entice away from this land. This is the only land we can do it in because it's the only land without blight, and we're just going to drag that guy out and prevent the. We're mainly preventing the build, but with events in the game, that Ravage could cause us real problems. Okay, so we've got a healthy island. During the next normal ravage, each city does +2 damage. Okay, that doesn't affect us. Add a disease. Ignore a disease during builds. That's fine. And then fierce mean, I've been told. That's how I pronounce that. So, where do we add a disease where it might help us? I mean, I think we've got the win here, regardless of what we do. But where do we like to place diseases in general? Just remembering I'm over-explaining here. In places where we'd hate for people to build. So probably actually this land here is a candidate, because this is not a land that has our presence and our disease. So I think this land is a nice one. And we've got that victory condition now. Each player removes 2 explorers or a town from land of Dahan. Okay, well that's just taking care of that before the ravage. And not a lot happening because we've cleared everything out. No explorer in there because no adjacent buildings. Nothing in the slow phase, just nothing. And so now we're at Terra 2, so we just need to kill all the buildings. There's just this city, so we can just win by placing this presence. So that's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. We could just gratuitously look at another card just to see if there's anything intelligent to say about this. So this is the only plant card, so it's probably going to be your pick. Wild tokens are incredibly powerful because they effectively, against most opponents, against most adversaries, but not all, they will prevent a build. So, and it has the fire, it has this. Fire in the Sky is also immensely powerful. The Strife will prevent a one-off ravage, and it's Fast Fear, which we all love. Reaching Grass means you can do some pretty shenanigan-y things, though it rarely actually makes sense to do so. But having extra range means that all of these awkward zero range abilities suddenly become very flexible. But it's one of those luxuries that kind of is theoretically exciting, but in practice I would be picking one of these. Twilight Fog brings madness is interesting, and I think you mainly pick this when you want the elements. All right, okay, let's finish this. We will have to pick something. Let's take the rack route. And we will just plonk in here, and we'll do our 3 damage to the city. We do get to push our Dahan if we want. We're going to leave them there. And that's the win. So thanks so much for watching. If you like the video, like the video. If you have any questions preferably about Spirit Island, put them down below. And these here comments. I want to start making a few talky videos, and I've got some in the pipeline, but I'm going to take a while. Anyway, until next time. Keep it spiritual. Oh, I've got a new screen now.